If you're in your 60s and thinking about running a marathon, whether it's a half, a full, or even an ultra, you've probably been told to slow down, take it easy, or maybe not do it at all. But here's the truth. Most runners in their 60s don't get injured because they're doing too much. They get injured because they're doing the wrong things. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to train for a marathon in your 60s without beating up your joints or constantly getting hurt. So I'm Dr. Ray Peralta, physical therapist and run coach. For the past 10 years, I've helped hundreds of runners in their 40s, 50s, and 60s stay consistent, get stronger, and run pain-free. And what I've learned is this: the rules change as you get older, but that doesn't mean your performance has to decline. So the major problem: most runners in their 60s fall into one of two traps. They try to train like they did in their 30s, and they break down, or they do the opposite and start doing less and less. And both approaches lead to the same outcome: more stiffness, more injuries, slower times, eventually questioning if they should run even more, right? Because oftentimes they'll pick up a plan from their favorite running coach, or their friend said, hey, grab so-and-so's plan. And they grab that plan, they follow it. It tends to be either way too much mileage, too much frequency, and their body breaks down, right? Because just because their plan may have worked for their friend, maybe their friend has been running for years, right? And maybe you ran, a couple of years ago, but now you've had like a 10-year or 20-year break, and now you're trying to restart running again. And, just following the same plan, even if it says quote unquote beginner, sometimes it's not enough for your body's recovery, or it's too much for you. And if you want to copy this Google Doc or check out my other free training guides for running pain-free, join my free school community for runners, link in the description. So instead of doing more or doing less, like avoiding running altogether, I'm like, I'm just going to only do 5Ks. Because the truth is, if you're in your 60s, it is possible to do a full marathon or halves or even ultras. You just need to train smarter. And here's how. So step one, run less, but with a purpose, right? This is where most people mess up. You don't need to run every single day of the week. Again, there's so many training plans out there telling you, you have to run 5 days a week to train for a marathon. And no, you don't have to do that. In fact, many runners I work with do actually better with just 3 runs per week. And yes, you can do this for a marathon as well, 3 runs per week, 2 to 3 days of cross training. This also works for ultra marathons as well, if you're wondering. And so the cross training will include, for example, biking, rowing, swimming, plus also doing strength training. So cross training is, for the cardiovascular side, but then you also have time to do 2 or 3 days a week of strength training as well. But as far as the running goes, it's only 3 runs per week. That's it. Why? Because recovery takes longer as you age. So instead of just beating your joints up daily, you reduce impact, stay consistent, show up fresh for your key workouts, and less running, but higher quality. And for many beginner runners, it might just be an easy run, a tempo run, and a long run. If you're a bit more experienced, it might be a speed or track repeat workout, a tempo run, and a long run. And if you're a complete beginner, it just might be run walk 3 times a week. All right, so the run walk method is also a very viable way to build up your fitness, but you also don't have to do that 5 days a week. 3 days a week is also fine. And then the other days a week, you could cross train. Even walking is a good cross training activity. So step 2, strength training is non-negotiable, right? After 30, you start losing muscle mass, this age-related decline in sarcopenia, unless you do things to slow down the decline by doing strength training. But unfortunately, so many runners skip strength training altogether, or if they do it with too light of a weight to make any meaningful change, right? If you don't strength training, you're literally getting weaker every year. And even if you think you're strength training, but you're just doing the same very light weights all the time, what happens is your muscle actually start getting weaker, more stress on joint. Now, don't get me wrong, lifting light weights is better than not lifting at all. So if you're not lifting at all, you can start with just lifting light weights. But after a while, you also want to start making those light weights a little bit heavier. Right. I also don't want to discourage you if you're a complete beginner. You say, I have to jump to heavy right away. If you're a complete beginner, you can jump to light weights and then go moderate weights and heavier weights, etc. But what I recommend is at least 2 times per week. But if you have time, you can even do 3 times per week of strength training, full body strength training. Train your arms, train your core, train your leg, compound movements, things like squats, deadlifts, steps up, step downs, and upper body some more too. So, do your presses, overhead press, bench press. You could train your arms in isolations, biceps, triceps, etc. But when it comes to the legs, which a lot of runners also, really want to focus on the legs, or they should, the posterior chain, glutes, hamstrings, calves, in addition to those compound movements, because you could train movements in compounds, but also in isolation. And especially if you have a weak area or weak link that you need to work on. Sometimes if you have a past injury risk of like Achilles tendon, then you have to pay special focus then to make sure your Achilles, your gastroc, your calf and soleus are pretty strong. Otherwise, you're going to be at an increased risk of a future injury if you had a past Achilles tendon injury in the past. Or same thing with like the knee. If you have a past knee injury, you have to be extra careful, pay extra attention to your quads and hamstrings or the hive. Otherwise, you might be predisposed to that area getting weaker in the future. And again, you don't need hours in the gym. I'm a big fan of single set strength training where you just, for example, do one set to momentary muscular fatigue. Maybe you're doing squats, 8 to 12 reps, or even 5 to 6 reps going heavy. Again, it depends on your ability level. If you're a complete beginner, you could do lighter weights, but you don't need to spend hours in the gym. 20 to 30 minutes of strength training is enough. And you can even do it from home if you want to get home equipment. You can do body weight, adjustable dumbbell, kettlebells, etc. And if you want to go to the gym, you can. Just again, you don't have to spend hours in the gym, right? Focus on getting stronger, not just moving more weight around. And if you're still kind of skeptical about strength training, there's actually a study that shows strength training improves a running time. Right? This is a study done on 5K runners, like actually pretty competitive 5K runners, but improves their running economy and muscle power. Because you'll see so many coaches say, oh, strength training is optional, right? Yeah, it's nice to have, but you don't need it to improve your running. In fact, if you do strength training the right way, you could actually swap out. And this study showed 32% of the running volume was replaced with strength training, heavy lifting, explosive training, and some speed type work. And they actually improve their running time and performance and their muscle power. And this goes kind of against conventional wisdom where people think that, oh, strength training is just optional. It's nice to have. No, if you implement it the right way and improve your running. And the other thing, it could actually decrease your injury risk as well. You're more durable, right? So the stronger you are, the less chance of it breaking down, because running is a high impact sport, 2 to 3 times your body weight. So if you're nice and strong, you could withstand the impact stress of running and kind of recover a little easier between your run workouts. Step 3, stop chasing high mileage. This is a big mindset shift. A lot of runners think that more miles equal better results. And I get it. Maybe you've heard from other coaches. Coaches work with, competitive runners, elite runners, Olympians, that, for them, that's their full-time sport. That's their full-time job, right? They're trying to squeeze out every little small percentage part of improvement. But for the majority of runners, right, you're a recreational runner. You just want to run for longevity. You don't need to be running, 90 miles a week, 100 miles a week, right? And I know some people try to make the argument, you should at least be doing 60 miles a week for marathon training. You don't even have to do that for marathon training. In fact, you could do 30 miles per week and complete a marathon. And it's actually completed around 3 hours as well. I've actually done this myself. I ran a sub 3:30 marathon with just about 35 miles per week or so. I wasn't even doing crazy high mileage. So this argument that you need to at least do 60 miles per week, I also think is unfounded. I understand at the highest levels, where you try to squeeze out every small percentage. But again, for the majority of runners, especially if you're just trying to train for longevity, you're not trying to win the gold medal at the next Olympics, you can do a low mileage approach and still improve your running. And the beauty of low mileage approach is also you decrease your risk of injury, right? And, you could compare, you want to test this out. Some people want to test this out, right? Cool. Compare how your body feels. If you're really gung-ho, if maybe you come from a background of doing high mileage, experiment. How does your body feel when you swap out some of the high mileage for strength training and then do the low mileage approach, see how your body recovers? Most people will find when they do this experiment that actually, they're able to perform a bit faster, more recovery, and they just weren't doing strength training properly. When they do the strength training properly, their running performance improves without having to do a high mileage approach, right? The goal is adaptation, not exhaustion. So predicting lower extremity injury, there's actually an older study here. Running more than 40 miles per week was one of the most important predictors of running-related injuries, right? So just if you want to look up the study, you can see this for yourself, that if you increase your mileage more than 40 miles per week, that's one of the predictors. Doesn't mean it's going to be guaranteed you're going to get hurt, but your risk of injury increases. Another study, how much running is too much, right? Increasing your single running distance, for example, if you take your long run, by more than 10% of the longest run of the past 30 days is another risk for increased overuse injury, right? Running-related injury, right? So you also have to be mindful, what does your 30-day window look like in the past 30 days, right? So if your longest run was only 10 miles, let's say in this 30-day training block or month, you shouldn't go from like a 10-mile to, let's say 15 miles, right? Or 16 miles or what have you. Really try to do a small increase, right? Maybe go from like 10 to 11. And, very small increases is more gradual. Yes, you could kind of play around a little bit when you're a beginner and you have a little bit more wiggle room, going from 1 mile to 2 or 3 miles or something like that. But when you train for a marathon or just want to be healthy and in general, also pay attention to not making a very big jump in your long run mileage as well in the past 30 days. So master your intensity, right? Most runners train too hard too often. easy runs should actually feel easy, right? So if you're going on an easy run, it should be conversational pace. And if you're doing a hard run, it should actually be hard, like comfortably hard, right? It shouldn't be that you're smoking yourself like to the extent you can't even complete the run. So if you're doing an interval workout, it should be comfortably hard that you could complete the entire interval workout. Like if you are so exhausted you can't complete the final reps of your interval workout, that means you also went too hard. It's a comfortably hard, and yes, it could vary. It could be a little faster when you're doing intervals and a bit more moderate to comfortable hard when you're doing tempo runs. But essentially, you want to match the intensity to the actual workout that you're doing to get the adaptations of the workout, whether you're doing an easy run, right, speed run, or a tempo run. And if you get this wrong, you stay tired, you don't recover, you plateau, or you might even get hurt because maybe you pushed it too hard on a hill workout, or you pushed it too hard on an easy run. We should have been taking it easy. You can use an RPE scale to monitor your intensity, right? You can see it's like 0 to 10, or 1 to 10, very light activity, 2 to 3 light. There's like the easy run, 4 to 6 is like moderate. That's your kind of tempo. And then when we talk about like very vigorous to very hard, that's going to be like your speed workouts. And then like 10 is like max effort sprints. But again, you can use this RPE scale to also help you gauge, are you training at the right intensity as well? So prioritize recovery like it's training. Recovery isn't optional anymore. It's part of the program. Focus on sleeping at least 7 hours a night. If possible, hydrate, manage your stress. And if you're waking up exhausted, that's a red flag that it isn't working. Like if you need to rely on coffee all the time to just get going throughout the day, especially if you need like a morning coffee, an afternoon coffee, chances are you're not getting enough recovery. So poor sleep is associated with increased risk of running. This study looked at 333 runners. Poor sleep leads to a 36% higher risk of running-related injuries, right? So sometimes people think, oh, sleep is just a nice to have. It's not that big of a deal. You can see here, the science is even showing it 36% higher risk of injury. So nutrition also matters more, right? You can't out-train a diet anymore. When you're younger, your metabolism is good, right? You're 20 years old, you could eat a whole pie of pizza, be fine, and drink a soda, 2-liter soda. But now as you're getting older, you have to focus on eating healthy foods, because if you eat foods, junk food, you don't have the same fast metabolism. You may gain excessive weight. Obviously now if you're overweight, or you could increase your risk of injury with just being overweight. And also, undereating is also a big issue as well, right? Make sure you focus on protein, whole foods, hydration, electrolytes, and also healthy carbs and smart fats. Poor nutrition equals slow recovery and more inflammation. I also want to talk about undereating, which is also a big risk factor too. Sometimes people go onto the opposite end of the spectrum where they undereat. You also have to eat enough food. So in this study, they looked at disordered eaters, people technically who are undereating, and injured runners were eating about 300 fewer calories per day than runners who stayed healthy. So you also want to eat enough food, right? You also don't want to undereat. And one of the macros that was actually in this study was fat, right? And the injured runners in this study ate about 20 grams less fat per day, which is, people don't even think about fat being a nutrient that your body needs. Obviously, you should be eating healthy fats, not like fried chicken, but things like olive oil. You could do nuts, butters, etc. But you need also healthy fats in your diet, which supports hormone health, and actually helps the longevity when you're, again, eating healthy fats, right? A big fan of, extra virgin olive oil, avocados, etc. So step 7, mobility, your secret weapon. If you feel stiff, that's not just aging, right? People think, oh, I'm just getting older, that's why I'm waking up stiff. That's also a lack of movement in your key joints, right? Many times people wake up stiff because their back is stiff, their hips are stiff, their knees or ankles, right? So you have to work on mobility. I recommend at least 10 minutes per day of daily mobility work on your tight or stiff areas. It might be what I outlined here, because these are fairly common, but yours might be a bit different. You might notice that maybe your mid back is a bit more stiff, or your shoulder, or what have you. But anyhow, you want to focus daily mobility. And if you're very stiff, you might even do 20 minutes per day. You might even do 20 minutes per day, daily mobility, kind of like brushing your teeth. You may have a morning mobility, an evening mobility, to make sure you stay mobile, right? But at the very minimum, 10 minutes per day can make a huge difference. You're mobilizing, essentially taking the joints into different end ranges of stretching, whether it's your hip flexor, ankle dorsiflexion, lumbar extension, etc., just to name a few. So when you train this way, you stay consistent, you avoid the boom-bust injury cycle, you actually feel stronger, not more broken. I've seen runners in their 60s run their first marathon, or even run their, 5th, 10th, 11th, whatever marathon, but they're able to do it now healthier than when they kept getting injured or having to slow down. Or they hit times that they never thought possible. They thought they would never be able to, hit around a 3-hour marathon. They thought they would be stuck at the 4 or 5 hour mark. They shaved significant amount of time in their marathon Time they thought, oh, I was just getting older. I just have to expect getting slower, but it doesn't have to be that way when you do the right type of training. And if you want help applying this to you and your unique injury and training history, I do have a few spots open for private one-to-one coaching. We map out your training, fix the weak links, and keep you running pain-free. Link to apply in the description. So in conclusion, if you're in your 60s and chasing a marathon, you don't need to stop running. You don't need to train harder. You need to train smarter. Less ego, more strategy, more consistency, right? Definitely emphasize strength training, cross training, mobility, and that's how you keep running for life. If you found this useful, hit that like button, subscribe, leave a comment as well, and I'll see you on the next one.